Welcome to The Space Between. On this episode, I am joined by Diane Rixner. Diane is a yoga instructor, a Reiki master, and my amazing mother. Together, we discuss purpose, how important it is to walk our destined path in life, my mother's journey, the shifts in energy and consciousness, and how purpose and passion do not require you to quit your day job. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome to The Space Between. My name is Alyson Rixner, and I am delighted to have you join us for another fantastic episode of the Space Between podcast. Today is a very special day. Today is a day I didn't know, honestly, that would come. When I told my mother, who's sitting next to me, Diane, that I wanted to do this, and we had a lot of conversations, I think initially you said no, right?
I think I did say no in the beginning. Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for being here. It's so special to me that we get to do this together.
It is. It's a great day for us.
It is a great day. I love you a lot. So,
Love you more.
Everyone, this episode is titled Purpose, and it's a big one. And for those that have not listened to an episode of the podcast, the Space Between really is this interesting and transformational time that we find ourselves in. We are recording this April 15th of 2024. We have recently had a lot of major astrological and world events, like it all keeps coming, and we've been through a lot in the last couple years, and it's been tough. And when I started thinking about how we can shift and pivot in this time of great change, I started to think about connection and how we are incredibly disconnected. And we can connect through conversation, and that's what we're going to do here today. So thank you for being here, Mom.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited. So we are going to talk about purpose today. And purpose is an interesting word, right? It encompasses many things and kind of has many ways you could think about it. So before we get started with the definition, I would like you to introduce yourself. I mean, besides being my beautiful mother, who are you? And let the audience know.
I'm so happy to be here. You have no idea. I'm glad I got past that idea that I didn't want to or could not do this. So I am a retiree now. Yay. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, went to university, became a teacher for a while, and then I became an insurance professional.
Right, for your career.
Yes. During that time, I was a teacher. I had my two wonderful children. And being a mom is really my number one purpose in life. And sometime during my insurance profession, I decided that I was having nudges, and then I believed that I had a higher purpose for myself in this life. Being an insurance professional was a 9-to-5 money-making career.
Yeah.
And that was necessary at the time. My husband and I had a family. We had all the expenses associated with running a home. And I just always felt that I wasn't doing my purpose. I wasn't doing what I was called to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So aside from being a mom, which was, and I will let everyone know, this woman was born to be a mother. She's the most amazing mom. There was, I like the word use nudge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ping, right? It's just something that you can't shake. There's something there.
Right.
Right. And what did that call you towards initially with the nudge?
Right. So I felt I wanted to go back to the teacher role. And I felt drawn to learn more about yoga, about Reiki. I became a certified yoga teacher. I became a master of Reiki. And my passions, which they became, were going to allow me to give people tools in their life to connect with their whole self, body, mind, and spirit, and to help them cope with life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And a teacher is the thread.
It is.
And of service is another thread. So we're going to get back to that. But that's a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Of course.
So let's move into the definition. When we were talking about this, you at first said, like, I don't know if I want to talk about purpose. And this has been a topic that I've really wanted to talk about. But I understand why after looking at this definition. And I think what the audience will sort of engage with is that we're not just going to read the Oxford Dictionary definition. We have another definition and then a quote that I think will bring us closer to the type of purpose that we're talking about today.
Right.
Right. Because again, like I said before, it is a word that can be used in a lot of different settings.
Right.
So the Oxford Dictionary definition is the intention, aim, or function of something, the thing that something is supposed to achieve, right? So the purpose of this microphone is to ingest, it's probably the wrong word, to bring in sound, right? So that others can hear it. The purpose of this table is so we could set things on it or whatever. It's very, like, lame, this definition, in my opinion. I mean, is it a true definition? Sure, but that's not really what we're talking about. In the Oxford Dictionary, had nothing about meaning, purpose of life, path, why we come back, which is really ultimately what we're talking about today, right? That drive of why we came back here to this place in this time. So the second definition definitely resonated a little bit more. Refers to the reason or intention behind an action, decision, or creation, which is more of a true definition of purpose, right? It is the driving force that gives meaning and direction to our lives.
Beautifully stated.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's really what we're talking about today. And one thing I have to say to you in this space is that you have, amongst many other beautiful things that you've taught me in life, is you have always said to me, it's so important to find your purpose, to have something bigger than just going to work and making money and having the quote unquote career, right? Massively, massively big that you've been voicing that. And I would say, timeline wise, you started on your yoga path prior to probably even becoming certified. How many years ago? It's been a long time.
I first did yoga when I was at university.
When you were in college?
Yep, when I was at
So in your 20s?
At college.
Yeah.
Actually, 18.
Okay.
I was, first year freshman, 18.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had been doing yoga for 50 years.
Wow. Long time. I don't think I knew that.
I really got involved with yoga in 2002 and started attending classes regularly.
That's the time frame that makes sense to me.
At the Himalayan Institute near where we live. We're so blessed to have that facility near us, and started going regularly and met a wonderful teacher who inspired me to teach.
Right. Yeah. And that was where I was getting to.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting when you set the intention, and maybe you did or maybe you didn't, you'll have to tell me. I set an intention to go out and find my purpose because I was much older, right? Like I didn't think that this was going to be something that I was ever going to find.
Right.
And I think a lot of people probably resonate with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like finding your purpose. But when you open up to that, it's amazing how these, breadcrumbs and people kind of appear.
Right.
Right. And it's super important to reflect on that, right? I'm sure there was a lot of people in your path that helped you get so deep into your purpose like you are today.
There were.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And what I believe, I never tell anybody what to believe on here, but what I believe is that all those people were there and it's kind of predetermined and this is exactly, what we're supposed to be doing in this life. And so one of the things that I thought about, which you're going to love, from a spiritual perspective or an astrological perspective, is Dharma.
Yes.
Right? Is the Dharma. And it is a Sanskrit word that can be translated as divine service or life purpose.
There you go.
And I've heard people say when they are in their Dharma or when she is in her Dharma, right? As in your purpose in this life. And a lot of this collective and this third dimensional construct is that we forget. It's like a little game, right? We forget our Dharma coming in. It's not like we know as babies, okay, Diane, you're going to be a teacher and you're going to be, doing yoga and Reiki. And Alyson, you're going to start this podcast and start a consulting company and all of these things. Like you just don't remember, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have to find our way back to it.
In a way we do.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking about when I thought about Dharma, because there is no, you're not wearing a nameplate that says, hi, this is my purpose. Maybe in a different dimension that exists, but not here, right? So the other thing too, astrologically, so there was two things that I found out. And I always tell people, especially during this time, we've had a massive, massive energetic shift with this total solar eclipse. There's a Mercury retrograde. There's things going on with Chiron. It's been really transformative, even more so than the last year or two. And get a reading. If you feel lost or if you feel like you need some reconfirmation, right, get a reading. I'll link below. People have met Daryl. He's wonderful. Reach out and it's so much easier to have the people and the breadcrumbs in your life kind of help you along the way.
Yes.
Right. So the North Node is in relation to the moon's orbit when you were born. So it's not a planet, right? It's a point. It's not a planetary body. But the North Node is a factor that reveals someone's dharma or destiny. So if that's something that's interesting to you, if you've chosen this episode because you want to know more about your purpose, astrologically, that would be a place to look. And then the other thing that kind of coming up in my research, because I'm not an astrologer, but I always like to, make these points, is it's important to understand how your sun, moon, and rising signs come together. And that has a lot to do with your destiny. And something interesting that we share astrologically, which is amazing, and a lot of purpose in this life was for us to come back together. We've said that however many hundreds of times over the years. We have the same moon, right? So we have a Virgo moon, and you are a Aquarius sun, so that's your birth sign, and a Leo rising. And I am a Leo sun, birth sign, and Aquarius rising. So we almost have the exact same chart, except our rising and sun signs are flipped. Remember when we found out about that?
I know. We couldn't believe it was true.
What is going on?
It's true.
But the more that we learn about astrology, the more we get it, right?
Yes.
No, of course.
Yes.
We have very similar charts. Okay. So the last thing, and then we'll kind of get into, I wanted you to read your quote and we'll jump into all the things. So some of the narratives that exist is that we're not really here for a purpose. We're here, we work, we make money, and then we die. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's negative, but how many times have you said that or heard that, right?
I heard it just this morning.
You did?
From someone, yeah. When I told them that I was going to talk about what your purpose is on a podcast, they said, here to make money. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. that is a very strong narrative in the collective, right? And we tend to forget that money is something we made up, right? It's human creation. It's not like a tree, right? Or a rainbow, those types of things. That's interesting. So that's a narrative. In the space between, we need to be intentional and purposeful with everything in our lives. So with purpose not being life purpose, right? You're purposeful in doing things that can lead you to your purpose. Mm-hmm. That's a spiritual narrative that exists, right? As you're more intentional and purposeful with the decisions you make and the things that you do. You know, you decided to go to yoga classes, right? You kind of followed that nudge, and then you had been doing it for so long to decide you were going to teach, and met this person at the institute, and right? It's all this kind of purpose, intentional way of living. And then again, just what I believe, and I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but I believe we have all come into this life and past lives with a specific purpose. And when you think about it, I like to illustrate this, right? We live in this world, on this planet, and everyone's doing something different. And there's no other person on this planet like you, or like you, or like me. And when you think about that, that's empowering as hell. It's like, wow, we're so special, all of us. And there's a reason. And it's our job to find out what it is. At least that's what I believe. Right?
Yes.
So why don't you read your quote?
Okay, yeah.
It was so beautiful when we talked about it this morning.
When I was thinking about coming to the podcast and what we were going to talk about, I remembered that on Insight Timer, which is a wonderful meditation application, there was a spiritual teacher, David Gandelman, who I listened to quite a while. Every morning I would listen to his 10-minute gratitude meditation. And he is also an author. And his quote is, "You are here on purpose, for a purpose. Life will reflect that back to you, what you're looking for."
Now that, folks, is definition of purpose.
Yeah.
That really resonates. I feel that in my body when you speak about that. Right?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about mirroring on the podcast and life reflecting things back to you. And it seems when I wasn't in my purpose, I don't know how you feel, right? But you always had the mom thing, so it might have been different for you. I just felt like I was going uphill.
Uh-huh.
You know, did you ever feel that way?
I felt I needed a change. And I remember at one point in my insurance career, I was in customer relations, and I went to my supervisor and I said, I want to move into the underwriting department. I'm thinking, this is something I need to do to continue my journey through life. I need to understand the whole process of insurance.
Right.
And I needed to go to underwriting. Yeah. And my supervisor said, no, no, you are a people person, and you need to stay in customer relations. You have such wonderful relationships with our customers.
Right.
And I was angry, of course, but then I saw as time went on how that has transferred to the wonderful relationships I have with my yoga students, my Reiki clients. And
he was right, just not in the way you were thinking of it.
Yes, yes.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm. But you will have people in your life who, my supervisor showed up at that moment for a reason.
Right.
Like, no, that you're not going down this road.
Right. It's not always
stay
like,
here. You need to stay with people, with your people.
Right. That's an interesting point. I'm glad you said that, because it's not always someone that's like, oh, come here, I will carry you down this road. It's like, no, you are not going that way. Get the hell out of here. Right. And that can be hard, right? Those moments are tough to get through.
Yeah.
That's a big part of the purposeful journey.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said that. So why don't we talk about people on the podcast have, if they've listened to other episodes, I chose not to have children. It wasn't easy. You are such a mom. It was not easy for you. And there's been such a journey with our relationship and for you with that decision, right? But it's the complete opposite. For you, I don't know if you always wanted children, but once you became a mom, it was like, right. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because that was big for you.
Right. I got married relatively late for people of my generation.
Right.
Yeah. I got married when I was 24. And then at 27 was when I became your mom. And then the pieces of the puzzle of my life just fell together in terms of the incredible love that I felt when I looked at you. It was a love that had gone above and beyond any love I had ever felt in my whole life. And still, it's there. And then 3 years later, we were blessed to have our son.
Again.
Our son was like, and then once again, just feeling that love for another human being so different from what you were.
Right.
And once you're a mom, you're always a mom.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't go into this being like, I definitely want kids. Wasn't it something that you kind of warmed up to?
Oh, it was something I warmed up to.
Yeah.
Yes. During those times when I was in my 20s, similar to now, you might question, do I want to bring another human into this space with what's going on now? And my first answer was no.
Right.
No, I don't want to. It's not a good space right now.
It's funny how that keeps carrying on. Right?
Yes, but then
tale as old as time.
Yes. But then God had a different plan for me.
Right. And when I think about the word mother or, that sort of feminine archetype of mother, there's like no, of course I'm biased, right? Because you're my mom, but like, that is such, I could tell from a young age that this was something that you were meant to do. And that's not always that way for everyone that does it.
Right.
It's just not.
Right.
Right.
And part of it was I was so well trained by my wonderful mother, always allowing me to feel this incredible unconditional love. And she was a great teacher for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't be the mother I am if it wasn't for her.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have kids, you have a family, you go back to this career. So what age would you have been in 2002 when you started like putting more effort into the yoga thing?
You're going to have me do the math.
Oh, shit. Here we go with math. You're better at math than I am.
I am better at math. I was 50-ish.
Right. Okay. So that's a really interesting time.
Yes.
Right? At the end of the 50s, I just recently learned this. I don't know if you knew this, but there's a second Saturn return.
Oh, I think I had heard that.
At like the end of the 50s. It's just interesting how that's such a transformational time too.
Right.
So again, with the nudges, like, you had these callings. When did you realize that yoga was something that you had to continue to do? I could see you doing this forever, right? I don't know that it will ever not be a part of your life.
Right. As I said earlier, I was inspired by this incredible teacher, and I felt drawn to give people tools to help them cope with life. And then during that time, I had another mentor, teacher, and I was kind of questioning my thoughts about becoming a yoga teacher. And this was a clerical person in the clergy. He was a member of the clergy. And he said, absolutely, I can see this is definitely a path for you. So he was put in my path for that reason, to encourage me, because I had such respect for him that if he had said, no, I don't think so, I would have stopped. I would have stopped that line.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting how that shifted.
Uh-huh.
I bet you that wouldn't happen today. If you were to ask someone, we're moving away from needing permission from other people.
We are.
Which is a little scary and unsettling for some people. I mean, we have Aquarian in us, so we're like, this is amazing. We don't want to answer to anybody. But we're moving out of that. But that was, many years ago, right? Where you went and sought counsel from other people. And maybe sometimes in the case it's the right person, sometimes it might not be. I'm not talking about for you. I'm just saying like in general.
Right.
Right? Because I've had those times too when people have said, it's a really bad idea. Moving to New York, everyone told me it was a bad idea. It was the best thing I ever did. Friends like, are you crazy? Right? So it's just interesting how, here's a great question for you that just popped up. How do you discern your own energy when making decisions like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, if someone said to you today, I really think you should stop doing Reiki, you're so involved in it, right? It's so rooted in who you are now. Right. But go back to when you first started. What if that person would have said, I think that's a bad idea? How would you tell someone to stay in your own energy and discern what's right in your heart?
It's interesting you asked that, because I did think through that part of it. And once you find something that lights you up, and when you're doing it, it just flows through you in such an intense way that you feel, I'm in my moment. I'm in my niche. And if you spend time, a little bit of time every week, just moving towards that, and every time you see something happen that affirms what you're doing, gratitude is necessary. You have to have gratitude at that moment. And then it's going to keep coming to you. That the world is not against us when we start moving into our purpose. The world is for us. The universe will help us. God, the divine, whatever you call your higher power, will continue to help you on that path. And it would be easy.
Okay, that's so funny that you said that, because easy is a trigger word for me. Right. Think about it, because you were always told another narrative, right? Nothing that's worth it is easy. Everything that's worth it's going to be really tough. Now, you never told me that, but that's something that you hear all the time. There is an ease and a flow to it, isn't there? There is.
There is an ease and a flow. And that's actually part of a meditation that you and I learned recently. We went on our retreat. That
Kripalu.
that we send prayer, positive vibrations, once again, whatever you want to call it, love, to people we know, that they would live a life of ease.
Yeah. The metta. We'll link it below. METTA. It's, I feel like I never get the sequence right, but it's, may I be safe, may I be happy,
strong,
may I be
strong,
healthy, may I be strong, and may I live with ease.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. The strong is kind of the healthy, but they say it's strong.
Right. And we'll have to shout out Danny Shapiro.
We do.
Because
she taught us.
She taught us the metta meditation. And Rick Rubin is into the metta meditation. And when I went to Canyon Ranch, we did the metta meditation. So it's been, again, talking about reaffirming. And it goes back to your quote from Insight Timer. What did he say? It mirrors it back to you.
Yes. Yes.
Right? That's beautiful.
Life will reflect back to you what you're looking for.
Right. So let's unpack just a few things that you said there, because my God, is that going to make a great social media reel? Everything that you just said. Because you do, once you get those pangs and act on those pangs and start to move Because it just doesn't happen, right? That's something that's important. You can't just sit back and it's just going to fall into your lap.
No.
Right?
You have to keep moving all the time. Don't let the idea of what your higher purpose is leave you for one day. Every day, do something to move towards that.
Right. And even if it's just, I'm such a big fan of mindfulness, right? Even if it's just mantras or, a meditative practice that will call in. Because a lot of times, I know at least with me, I didn't really have something that I loved so much that became my purpose the way yoga, because yoga kind of led you into Reiki and now you have these practices. But I didn't have that, right? I've, always been active, but I didn't have that. I came upon my spiritual path. My best friend, Jeannie, introduced me to a book that I refused to read for like 7 years or 6 years. Sorry, Jeannie. And that's what cracked me open. And I've talked about that on the podcast before. That led me to sitting here with you, right? Which is the beginning of my purpose with the space between and the other things that this is going to become. It can feel daunting. I don't know if you felt that because our paths were very different, but it felt daunting for me. I felt like I was late figuring it out.
You may have been late, but you have been having meaningful conversations since you could talk. And you have had conversations.
I love that, by the way. You heard it here first. No one knows me better than her.
You have had conversations with people that were very easy to have when people needed to be uplifted, and you have had conversations about the tough things. You have had conversations with people when no one else wanted to have those conversations with those people. So I have seen this developing your whole life.
Thanks, Mom. I guess I don't think about it that way. Yeah, this is still, even though I've been on this path my whole life, it still feels new and kind of different.
Right, because you're putting it out into the world. You and I are not having this conversation alone.
No, we're not.
Let's be real.
No, we're having a very public conversation that will last into the ethers well after we're gone. But I appreciate that because it's the meaningful conversations and the connections and being able to have the tough conversations that people shy away from. And that's what this work is, right? And I'm going to bring some more interesting topics.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I have some different ones that we're going to start pulling in and things that are tough for people to talk about. So I appreciate you saying that.
Of course.
So what else do you want to share? I know that you made notes.
I wanted to talk a little bit about how my yoga and Reiki evolved, through the process of retiring from my professional career, was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I felt at that point that I needed to help people cope. So I offered classes on a donation-based fee, and people were encouraged to send that fee. Instead of giving the fee to me, we could call it an energy exchange. I like that. It's a kinder way to talk about money that's exchanged as fees. They would give that money to organizations that were helping those that were food challenged during the pandemic. And then there was people who became stressed, a lot more anxiety within the culture. So I went back to school, became a student, and learned how to teach yoga for anxiety, and then developed a program called Calm Yoga to help people. The other thing was some people became, coming out of the pandemic, some people became lackadaisical during that time. So people were more concerned about their body image.
Right.
So then I developed a very strong flow practice program. And then I paired that with women singer-songwriter yoga as my music.
I forgot about that.
And that was very helpful to people. Right. So there were a lot of changes that happened during those 2 or 3 years.
And what I love about that is, Daryl's voice is always in my head, and he always says we either serve or we suffer. right? It's like the
Yes.
famous Daryl Gaines quote. Well, there's many, but in service, you were already in your purpose, in your dharma, to shift, to continue to shift, because you saw what was needed. I believe these conversations are needed. Yes. You believed and believe, and it showed that there was a reason for it, right? People needed certain things at certain times.
Right.
And that also is that intuition, that true north that you have that told you that, right?
Right. And then going back to Daryl Gaines, I had readings from him. And I remember from one of the readings, he said, you are a healer. And although my yoga and my Reiki are sometimes termed healing modalities.
Right.
I am not a healer. Let's be clear. I can help a person get to a place where they can experience healing that they do themselves.
Very important. Very, very important. No one is a healer. And this goes into the shifting of the collective where, and I say this on the podcast all the time, come home to yourself. That's where the healing is. And again, you get by with help from your friends, right? You get by with a little help from my friends.
Thank God for the Beatles.
But you're right. I mean, that's amazing. I love that you brought that up.
Right.
Yeah.
And also going back to, how you mentioned how I would, try to help people find their diversion. I had spoken to you and many others I've spoken to, find your diversion from your 9-to-5 money-making professional career, which I'm not putting that down. We all need to have a steady source of income, but there needs to be something else in our life besides that. Some people, your 9-to-5 is your passion.
Great.
It is your higher purpose.
Not common though.
And I try to think of people just in my inner circle who are in that position. And right off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone.
Yep.
But I know there are some people.
Rick Rubin talks about that all the time because he works with celebrities and he's like, most people do not have this. So don't think that that's normal.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was reading some quotes regarding higher purpose as I was thinking about today. And John Steinbeck said, and I don't have his complete quote, but he felt that being a human being, it was our responsibility to find our higher purpose while we're on this earth. And you talked about that before. Why are we here?
Yeah. I love that. One thing that's shifted dramatically for me since I've been doing this, I wake up feeling different.
Of course.
I'm like, oh, wow. There is a energetic and emotional and somewhat physical and psychological fuel that comes with this.
Right. It's the flow. It's the flow. And I remember first talking about flow. I had read about it. First person I talked with about flow was your dad, my husband, Gary. And I first met him. He was performing. He's an incredible musician.
Oh, my God.
And when I watched him, I said, you really get into this, don't you? And he, of course, he said yes. And when he performs, he is in that place where he lights up.
It's beautiful. That is the first person I think I ever saw in that state too. That's interesting that you said that, because when he's a trombone player, and when he picks up the trombone, it is like anything you've ever seen. It's unbelievable. And maybe that was some of my first understanding of energy.
Yes.
Because it's an amazing energy to watch and observe someone that is in their dharma.
Yes.
In their flow.
And it's also someone who realized that, there had to be a 9-to-5 money-making profession, and he found that, but he never stopped playing the trombone. And he is still in his retirement. He will play in his up until his last breath.
Yeah, absolutely. I am so, of course, grateful for you, but I'm so proud of you because what people don't know, and we won't get into it, is that you haven't had an easy path. Life has not been easy for you. Your family, there's a lot of things that has come about. And I feel publicly to acknowledge that no one is saying that life is easy in your purpose. It gets easier. But I think a lot of people that seek out their purpose in the way that you did, there's a lot of healing that you had for yourself in that process.
There is. And if you can think about yoga as being a uniting of body, mind, and spirit, that through yoga, I was growing. I was getting such a higher vibration of my spiritual self, and then wanted to share that with people, because I think that is really important in the beginning of this process of finding your diversion, is to come together as a whole person. So we have our body, mind, spirit. There are different terms for them, but yoga can connect all of that. And then you move forward in that position.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And it's interesting because I'm thinking about, we've never talked about this, but you found it through yoga. I found it through, I became a student of the spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get enough. I mean, I joined every program. I read every book, I did this, I did that. And that just goes to show anyone that's listening that's like, because there may be people thinking like, oh, that's, I wish I could find this. I'm a little jealous. And I've had people say that to me recently because now I've stepped into this. Just keep being curious. Keep following those pings and those nudges. Right?
Yes. And be grateful. At every advancement you make towards finding it and being in it, to be grateful.
Yeah. So 2 questions, and then I want people to know where they can connect with you. So how has your relationship with purpose evolved in the space between, which is where we sit now, this interesting time?
Well, since I retired from my professional career in 2021, during the pandemic, and it was an easy transition because I was coming out of that. I had a part-time work from home position at the very end, which was wonderful because I had so many times gone to my supervisor when I was in the insurance world and said, "Can I work from home? There is no reason that I need to be in this cubicle." And they would all just say, no, you need to be here. We have to watch you, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then it took the pandemic for me to finally get a position where I was working from home.
Right. I forgot about that.
And worked part-time. And then I just kind of eased out of that profession. And so then the yoga and the Reiki evolved because I had the time then to go back to school, get more certifications, take more classes, and share this with more people. Because when I was working 9 to 5, I was only teaching 1 or 2 classes a week. And now I teach 6 classes a week.
Right. And you have more time to be available for Reiki and
yes,
all of that. It's hard when you're working. I mean, it is. There's a juggle. Right. Yes. I'm juggling it now. Right. I own a company that keeps me very busy, and this isn't easy, but you make time for what you love.
Right.
You figure it out.
And when you're moving into it, of course, the yoga was never the priority over my 9 to 5 money-making position, my professional career.
Can't be. Yeah.
It couldn't be.
Right. So last question. I can't believe it's almost over. See, doesn't it go fast?
It does go
fast. I told you.
It's just like a yoga class. It goes so fast.
It goes so fast. You're like, oh my gosh, we're almost done. Okay. So the last question is, what change do you want to see with purpose in the collective and in the world for people? What change do you want to see when it comes to the life purpose and the Dharma?
I would like to see people looking for this, looking for your higher purpose. Just take a moment and get quiet and think about what do I love? What lights me up? And how can I get my first step? How can I get my foot into that? And then you're on your way. And then if you are in a supervisor position, and like I talked about earlier, when I was trying to find my way and I decided I wanted to go into a different department, and my supervisor said, no, that's not who you are. If you are at all a mentor to someone and you can either help them or say, no, I don't think that's for you, that you have a responsibility in whatever industry you're in. If you see that a person has a strength, a calling, please help them find it and get into it.
That's beautiful. God, that's amazing. Wow. What a great answer. Well, how can people connect with you? We got to get you some more social media openness here, but what's the easiest way? Facebook. Well, maybe Facebook, or we'll link Instagram below.
I think the easiest way is to, if you go to my website, which our son created, so talented as an artist, it's cultivatewellbeing.life. And if you hop onto my website, my Facebook's there, my phone number, my email.
We'll link the website then.
Yes.
But you have virtual classes, so not everybody has to live in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Correct.
You don't have as many as you used to, thankfully, because you're back in person, which is awesome.
Yes.
But Reiki can also be done distance, and I think a lot of times people don't realize that. So your Reiki business is something that people can check out. She's amazing. I know I'm biased, but she's amazing.
Right. And we didn't have the time to touch on how I got into Reiki, but that.
I want to do a whole second session with you. Will you come back?
Of course I will.
See, I pitch everyone while they're sitting in this chair so they can't say no. I am a true salesperson, right?
You are. You are. I always said you could sell paper bags to people.
Hey, maybe that's what I'll end up doing. Who knows where life will take you. But I would love to have you back to talk about Reiki. But in the meantime, people can connect with you in that as well. So Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So everyone, thank you so much for joining us in the space between for this very special episode. We hope that those that are in their purpose are reaffirmed, and those that are getting those nudges continue to pay attention and move forward. Please like, subscribe, share this episode with someone that might find value, and we'll see you soon again in the space between. Thank you so much for joining us in the space between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in the space between.